Hi y'all, Billy here. Welcome to the Messy Studio. In the first three parts of So You Want to Turn Pens, we talked about lathes, we talked about the tools that you're going to need and some of the optional tools, and then we talked about pen kits. And I gave you some pointers on where to find some of your pen kits. In this episode, part 4, we're going to talk about pen blanks. I thought long and hard about how to break this up so that it makes sense. And so what we're going to talk about first, we'll talk about wood blanks. And then we'll talk about synthetic blanks, and there are several types, and I'll go into those. And we'll talk about special blanks or specialty blanks. And I'll identify where you can find some of those as well. I've already talked about one good resource where there are vendors on IAP, the International Association of Penturners forum. That's a good place to look. I've bought a lot of blanks from them in the past, or from sellers there in the past, at really, really good deals. Even better, you can get involved with a blank swap with some of the members there. I've done that as well. I've swapped blanks with members from Australia and gotten Australian woods in return for American woods like mesquite and pecan, etc., and Texas ebony that are really, really hard to find in Australia. So those types of things are available to you. So without further ado, let's get into the pen blank world and talk about wood blanks. When I first started turning pens, my supply of wood was relatively sparse. I had some pieces of maple that I had cut from maple trees in my own yard. I was fortunate enough to scrounge some hard maple and some pieces of cherry and some pieces of walnut from the wood shop at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The people would throw stuff in the cutoffs in the trash bins, and I would grab some of that. Then I found IAP, and well, let's just say this whole pen turning thing and blank thing, as you noticed from the numbers of pen kits that I showed you, the storage containers, then they're all full of pen kits. I've got quite a few, and pen blanks is very much the same, and you'll see that this gets relatively addicting, and that can become expensive. So I'll try to point out some sources so that it doesn't break your bank, and as best I can. And like I said, the whole blank swap thing is an option that you've got going on too. So let's talk about wood blanks. I mean, what is there to say about wood blanks? You can make pens from any local woods that you have available. Here in this part of Texas, we've got mesquite, we have huisach, we have pecan, a few walnuts, not very many, not much cherry, no maple that I've seen. A few mulberry trees are available, hickory, and lots of oak, live oak, blackjack oak, Spanish oak, burr oak. There's a lot of oak around here, and I've turned a lot of oak in some of my other projects. That said, whatever species that you have available there, and hackberry, that's a local species. So whatever woods that you have available in your area, you can use. One example for milling pen blanks from stuff in your area would be stuff like these two pieces of spalted blackjack oak that I cut up and milled when I felled a tree down at a friend's place. They're kind of rough looking, but that's because they were cut on a chainsaw and then with a skip tooth bandsaw blade. But they'll still mill up nice and make good pen blanks. You can see the spalt lines in this one. You can see some fleck in this one. And they'll make nice pen blanks. And these are what I would consider jumbos. These are about 1-inch square, which is what I like to cut them. You can get pen blanks as small as a 1/2 inch, but those are difficult to deal with unless all you're going to make is slim lines. And here are some mesquite blanks that I milled up from a mesquite tree that I got from a friend's place. One of the things I love about the mesquite we have in this area is it turns a gorgeous red as it ages. Here's a small Sierra sized pen blank, and you can see it's got some sapwood. A lot of this will have figure in it. Other domestic woods that are really popular, they're not local here in Texas, but they are common in various parts of the United States, and that's Buckeye burl. Buckeye burl is absolutely gorgeous. It's relatively soft, so you really need to stabilize it. And when we get into specialty blanks, I'll talk about stabilization a little bit more. Another popular domestic blank among Penturners is redwood burl. It, being a conifer, is also pretty soft. It stabilizes well, but you don't have to stabilize it. The first bunch of redwood burl pens I didn't have stabilized. On occasion, you may even have people that know you that will buy you pen blanks for gifts for one reason or another. They know you make pens and they found something they thought you might want. Like this pack of maple that I got from a former co-worker as a retirement gift. She actually got me 4 different sets of pen blanks. This is 5 sticks of 5/8 maple. I'm sorry, it's labeled 3/4. And one of these is spalted. It says on the label Dusty Dog Woodworks. I've not looked them up, but that may be a source. Another domestic wood is ash. It's a little too open grain for my liking, as oak is sometimes, but that can be dealt with easily enough. Here's some more ash. Oh, when I was talking about domestics, I forgot to mention cherry. Well, I mentioned it, I just didn't show you any. Black locust is another domestic. It makes gorgeous pens, especially if you can find burl. This is all figured. Sorry, I'm trying to hold this and do the blanks too. Another domestic is sycamore. Sycamore makes a nice pen, especially if you can get it quarter sawn. It's where you can see the fleck in it. You can almost maybe see a little bit of fleck in this top blank. This was sold to me as curly sycamore, but I'm not sure it's sycamore. It is curly though, and it's pretty stuff. This is spalted sycamore, and as you can see from those top 3 blanks, they're cut on a bias. Cutting your wood on a bias can really make for some interesting looking pens. Or you can get into the exotics. Those are the pen blanks that are imported from other parts of the world, like this beefwood blank. I've not turned beefwood yet. It's going to be interesting to see how this comes out. I think it's an exotic. I'm not really sure. I've never heard of beefwood before. So let me show you some others. This is a batch of Cocobolo blanks that I picked up. Cocobolo is a nice wood out of South America. It's a rosewood. They say there's 2 kinds of wood turners. Those are allergic to Cocobolo and those who will be. I've only turned a few pieces of cocoa, so I haven't developed an allergy to it yet, but I also take extreme precautions when I am using it, both respiratory and for the sawdust getting on my skin. Here's a piece of eucalyptus. Here's a piece of marblewood. You can see why it's called marblewood. It's really pretty. Here's Chechen burl. It makes a really pretty pen. Most burls do, though. Irish bog oak is always a really popular exotic. Get that out of Great Britain. Bacote is a beautiful wood, makes gorgeous pens. This is from Mexico. All of your olive woods make pretty pens. This happens to be Greek olive wood. Russian olive wood and some others are grown here in the States. I love the smell of olive wood when you're turning it. It's just fantastic. And here's some Nara. This isn't burl, this is just regular Nara. It's a pretty wood, it's an exotic. In burl form, we refer to this as Amboina burl, and I have some of that too. Here we have another exotic called Huangano Negra, at least I think that's what it is. I'm not sure what it is or where it came from, but it's pretty stuff. This is an exotic called Monkeypod, 7/8 inch blanks. It's from a company called Shed Life Woodcrafts. I've not seen their stuff before, but these are some really nice looking pen blanks. This is Monkeypod, 7/8 inch pen blanks. I've not turned Monkeypod before, so this ought to be interesting. It's some nice looking stuff. They come nicely wrapped in cellophane, each blank labeled. Also in the batch was 5 sticks of mahogany, African mahogany. Mahogany is beautiful turned wood. And 4 sticks of something that was labeled lacewood. You can see the grain in that. There's another wood that looks a lot like lacewood and very often gets mislabeled as lacewood. I believe this to be one of those. There's a wood called leopardwood that looks exactly like lacewood. So how do you tell the difference? Well, I bought a stick. I've got a stick out in the shed that I bought at Houston Hardwoods. It was labeled lacewood, and it's not. It's leopardwood. I believe these are leopardwood as well. The difference between lacewood and leopardwood, from all I've been able to find over the years, lacewood, true lacewood, is lighter and not quite as dense, even though it looks exactly like leopardwood. You holding one blank of leopardwood and one blank of lacewood in each hand, blanks of the same size, the lacewood is noticeably lighter. But it's all still really pretty, it doesn't matter. I told you this could be addictive. And this container right here that you see is full of wood pen blanks. This bin is full of pen blanks. This bin is full of pen blanks. If you remember, I said that this can become addictive. All of these boxes are full of pen blanks. Now we're out in my shed. And so, other than, yeah, nice little burl there. Other than collecting your wood and making your pen blanks on your own, one of the best ways to get pen blanks, if you don't just want to use the local species from log form, and one of the least expensive ways, is to find somebody that sells hardwood lumbers, especially exotics, close to you. And what you do is you buy them in board form, like those, or those, or those, or these, or this, like this piece of zebra wood. That's a board. It was 113 inches long, 5/8 inches thick, 4.5 inches wide, and that'll give you a whole lot of pen blanks. And I think I gave like $10 for that stick. And here's a stick of red palm. It was about 4 feet long, about 3 inches wide, 3/4 of an inch thick, and I think for that stick I gave $7. It was in the the coal pile at Houston Hardwoods when I visited there. So if you have access to a hardwood store, you can buy lumber, even exotics like I just showed you, and cut your own pen blanks. That way your pen blanks will end up costing you maybe 50 cents to $1 each, depending on the species, as opposed to paying $2 to $5 a blank for exotics from some of the vendors that I'm going to direct you to now. In the last episode, talking about pen kits, I directed you to a number of vendors that were good sources of pen kits. Those vendors are also good sources for pen blanks, particularly, and I'll leave links in the description down below. Ernie at Beartooth Woods has reasonably priced pen blanks. Ed Brown at Exotic Blanks has some good prices on pen blanks. Ryan at Woodturningz has really good prices on pen blanks. And every 2 weeks, Woodturningz has a 2-week special. And in that special are usually some form of exotic pen blank, and they go on sale for a fraction of the cost. And remember, as with anything else, the more you buy, the less per blank that you're going to pay. That's just the way they do it. So that's a few ways that you can source your wood pen blanks. Either from stuff that you mill yourself, finding a local place that sells hardwoods, especially exotics, and you can go maybe find some deals in some of their coal bins, or from these 3 vendors. I also talked about International Association of Penturners members, and a lot of those are good sources for pen blank material, because they either have access to long stock that they cut up into blanks themselves and sell them at a reasonable price, or some may even be interested in swapping for your whatever you can find locally that they may not have access to. A Google search for pen blanks will show you any number of options that come up. I've bought pen blanks off of eBay. You have to be kind of careful. Look at the customer feedback and ratings. And oh wait, customer feedback isn't a thing anymore. So just check out the ratings and be aware that sometimes what you think you're buying may be a little different, because some have been known to doctor the color of their photos in the past. So you just have to be careful. But I've bought a lot of turning stock off, and there are many other online sources. All that said, that pretty much sums up everything I can think of about wood blanks. Let's talk about synthetics. So now we're going to talk about synthetic pen blanks. By synthetic, I mean pretty much anything that isn't wood, but particularly I'm going to focus on plastics. A lot of people use the term acrylic pen blanks. Well, more often than not, they're not acrylic. There are a number of plastics used in making pen blanks. A lot of people cast their own. I've cast more polyester resin blanks than I can count, which leads me to the first and what most people are familiar with, and that is polyester resin, or PR as it's affectionately referred to in the pen turning world. Polyester resin, it's a clear casting resin. Silmar 41 is the most popular used. It's a very clear, relatively viscous liquid. It uses MEKP, or methyl ethyl ketone peroxide, as the catalyst. It cures relatively quickly, but the nice thing about PR is you don't have to put it in a pressure pot or use a vacuum chamber to get it to not bubble. It typically doesn't bubble unless you have air bubbles trapped, if you're actually casting something into it like a pine cone. But you can mix colors with it and it makes some really pretty stuff. I've mentioned Ryan at Woodturningz. Anybody that's ever turned a product called Inlay Sacra, that's stuff that Ryan makes. I've actually seen them make it. They make it in a huge mold. I don't remember, I didn't actually measure the size of the mold, but it's several feet by several feet, and then they take it out once it cures and cut it up and label it and mail it out. There are a number of people that sell it other than Ryan. I think even PSI is now buying it from him and selling it. If you see Inlay Sacra, Woodturningz made it. It's PR, or polyester resin. Then you have your polyurethane resin. Well, by that I'm referring to Alumilite, which is the only thing I'll use anymore. With Alumilite, you have to use a pressure pot because unlike polyester resin, the bubbles won't come out on their own. You have to put them under pressure to shrink the bubbles so that you can't see them. So what's the real difference between the two? What's better than the other? Is one better than the other? It's a matter of personal preference. Like I said, I've cast many PR pen blanks. I don't use PR anymore. One of the reasons I don't use PR anymore is because of this. This fell 3 feet, or a little bit less, to my shop floor, and it snapped it. Polyester resin can be really brittle, especially if you use the prescribed amount of MEKP. When you're mixing it up, you're supposed to use, I don't remember if it's 7 or 10 drops per ounce of resin that you've got in the cup. A lot of people have also made note that Inlay Sacra seems to be more brittle than stuff that they get from other people who cast. There's been an ongoing argument in the casting community for a long time about why is some more brittle than others, and some disagree, but from my own experience and experimentation, trying different amounts of MEKP, the fewer drops of MEKP, and I think I finally settled on using 4 drops per ounce, I get a less brittle, more easily turned blank than using the 7 or the 10 or whatever the prescribed amount was. I can tell the difference, but still, it's brittle. It breaks easy. I've had customers drop their pens and break them. I've dropped pens and broken them. If you drop them on a hard surface, polyester resin, good chance it's going to crack. It's good stuff if you take care of it. Alumilite, I got sold on Alumilite by the guy that brought it to the wood turning community years ago, Curtis Seebeck, good buddy of mine. Been to his shop several times, and when we were talking about Alumilite versus PR one day, he handed me one of his Alumilite blanks. His shop is huge, concrete floor, about a 14-foot ceiling, and he said, "Here, try to break it." I said, "What?" He said, "Throw it, try to break it, throw it on the floor." So I dropped it. He said, no, throw it. So I threw it. I mean, hard as I could throw it down to the floor. It bounced up, hit the ceiling, came back down, not a mark on it. The stuff is resilient. Yes, it's quite a bit more expensive than PR, but for my money, again, I've said it before, customer service is my thing. I don't want a pen being dropped and having to come back to me for a repair. And with Alumilite, I don't have to worry about that. That's just my opinion. Your mileage may vary, and you know how opinions go. So, all that said, you can do your own resin. It's really easy. You can use nearly anything as a mold, and colors and swirls and metallics and pearls and all that wonderful stuff can go into it. So let's take a closer look at some of these materials. I was talking about Inlay Sacra from Woodturningz, and you can see it says Inlay Sacra right on the label. This is Inlay Sacra. It's some beautiful stuff. This is Inlay Sacra. I got all of this from Ryan. This is hard to tell, it's hard to see, but it's purple and black, and it's absolutely beautiful. I got this from Ryan. This is Inlay Sacra, as is this. And this. And this. Beautiful stuff. Really pretty stuff. And it likes scrapers a lot. Scrapers work really well on this. But you still have to have a gentle hand. A lot of people like to use Alumalite for what they call worthless wood blanks. I got these from Curtis and his buddy Terry. This is Texas Bluebonnet. I got these in August when I went to SWAT. But I consider these a specialty blank, and we'll talk more about these later. But that's what Alumalite looks like. Now, I said a lot of people use the word acrylic when they're talking about pen blanks, and that there isn't really that most pen blanks aren't truly acrylic. Well, there are some that are. Ernie at Beartooth Woods sells one, or not one, sells several that are referred to as acrylic acetate. That's one. That's one. You can see this has both purple and gold ribbon in it. The purple's on this side. This is just this one is actually green and purple, or maybe a silver. I can't tell. This is one that I got several different colors of this. That it's a little bit smaller, about 5/8 instead of 3/4. I got these from a guy in Canada. He imported them from overseas. This is also an acrylic acetate. Acrylic acetate, this also is acrylic acetate. Acrylic acetate is basically the same thing as lucite. Lucite is actually a trademark name by DuPont. I bought this long sticks. I've got 4 or 5 of these. Actually, I've got 6 or 7 of these. These I got from a company that's no longer in business, Pipe Makers Emporium. They use these, they sell them as lucite, and they use these for pipe stems. They also make beautiful pens. Another synthetic material that you may find from time to time, and these were imported from Italy. This is celluloid. I got these out of Canada as well. This is actually an old Schaefer model celluloid. You can find vintage Schaefer fountain pens made out of this stuff. And I think maybe this blue as well. And I've got a couple of colors of this. But you can get celluloid. So now we've talked about polyester resin. We've talked about a polyurethane resin like Alumalite. You can also use a 2-part epoxy resin to make pen blanks. I don't know how durable they are. We've talked about acrylic acetate or lucite, and now celluloid. The last synthetic I'm going to talk about is what a lot of commercial fountain pens are made of, aside from the celluloid, and that's ebonite. And this is a green and brown ebonite, kind of a camouflage. This is a brown and dark tan and dark brown ebonite, and this is just black ebonite. So where do you get this stuff? Believe it or not, I got this from Ed at Exotic Blanks. These acrylic acetate blanks also came from Ed at Exotic Blanks. So that's a good source for synthetic blanks. Beartooth Woods, Exotic Blanks, lest I forget, Inlay Sacra Lister from Woodturningz. Or you can invest and make your own, like I have done and still will do. One last synthetic that I haven't talked about yet, and I've made a number of pens out of this, is Chorion. Now this is a relatively plain looking piece, but you can do some really cool things with it. And here you see an example of a segmented Chorion piece that I made. And yes, that's aluminum in between the different colored pieces. from soda can or beer can. So there's not really that much else to say about synthetic pen blanks. So let's get into specialty blanks. As I alluded to before, some specialty pen blanks, or what I consider specialty pen blanks, are the things that actually get mixed with resin, like these blue bonnets mixed in Alumilite, or dyed stabilized wood mixed with Alumilite, like these. And there are a number of people that sell these. A guy here in San Antonio, Eugene, makes some of the prettiest ones I've ever seen, and you can find his either through his website, and you can get them from Beartooth Woods, or you can cast your own, like I've done. These are PR. And you can see some examples of some of those. Other specialty pen blanks would include segmented, like I just talked about with the Chorion. Segmented blanks. They don't have to be the kind of segmented blanks that you see people using in bowls with alternating whatever, but they can be. Segmented pen blanks could be made from just gluing different sized pieces of different woods together, like you can see in some of these. Specialty pen blanks would also include inlay blanks, or blanks that are made using inlays, and you see some of those here. So what kind of material can you use for the inlay? Well, you can use other wood. I've used different colors of cardstock in alternating layers. I've used thin aluminum from 1/8 inch wide, as thin as soda can. I've used guitar pick guard that you can buy. I get mine from Grizzly, or have. And there's different styles and colors and layers. You can get solid white, solid black, solid whatever, or you can get a mixture of white and black. I think some of mine are 3 layers. It's white, black, white, or black, white, black. Believe it or not, old credit card stock works just fine as an inlay material for pen blanks. Now, if you're doing inlays, you've got to have the thing to remember is whatever your material that you're going to inlay with has to be the same thickness as your saw curve. So keep that in mind. When it comes to segmented blanks and inlaid pen blanks, your imagination is pretty much your limit. Whatever you can think you can do. If you haven't heard of them, check out the GC Brothers. That's GISI. They do some amazing work, and they make all their own parts as well. They don't use kits at all, but they're jewelry makers, I guess, or something. Anyway, they work with metal, and their stuff blows my mind. Their segmented works are just absolutely stunning. Another kind of specialty blank includes pretty much anything cast in resin. I happen to prefer snake skin or lizard skin. And you can see some examples here. Another kind of specialty blank, believe it or not, is, well, I consider it a specialty blank anyway, and that's deer antler, especially when you mix it with some sort of a shell casing. And you can see a few examples of those that I've included here. As far as the things cast in resin blanks goes, you can get those from pretty much any of the vendors. Antler is harder to find, but it is available. Shell casings, find somebody that shoots, and I'm sure they'd be willing to give you some. The last specialty blank that I'm going to talk about, and I won't spend much time on it, is Micarta. You typically see these used in knife scales. Micarta are multiple layers of fabric that have been basically resin impregnated with some sort of resin and put under pressure and allowed to cure, and it forms a very, very, very tough, very durable material, and you can get some really cool patterns in it when you turn it on the lathe. I make both the layered style micarta, and I also do a special layered micarta actually on the lathe, and you can see some examples of that here. So concerning pen blanks, that's about all I can think of to tell you. This was going to be my last episode or part on So You Want to Make Pens. In this episode, or part 4, we've talked about wood blanks, where to get them, different kinds of woods, domestics, exotics, etc. We've talked about synthetics, the different kinds of synthetics, where you might find those. We've talked a little bit about specialty pen blanks, and I've showed you some of those and where you can get some of them. Overall, we've talked about lathes, what do you really need, the tools that you absolutely need, and some that are nice to haves. And then we talked about pen kits, the various models. I didn't get into all of them, but who has time for that? And where you can get them. And in this episode, we talked about wood pen blanks, synthetics, and specialty blanks. The doctor told me that I could do light stuff as long as I didn't spend too much time out here, and I can't lift anything over 10 pounds, I can't bend, and I can't twist. Well, I can make a small pen and not do any of those things. So what I'm going to do in the next episode is I'm actually going to go through the process of how I make a pen, and I hope it helps. All that said, thanks for watching. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you watching. Hopefully some of this is going to help somebody. That's the only reason to do it, because I didn't have anything when I got started. I just pretty much taught myself. And so I've tried to share some things and tips and techniques that I've picked up in the past years to maybe help your journey go a little bit smoother than mine might have. I thank you again for watching. If you like what you've seen, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Share the videos. And come back and see us. I appreciate it. Until next time, see you later.